So, welcome everybody. So this series, we've called it Meditation for Life, and we've been wanting to explore ways of approaching these two practices that we teach at Cambridge Buddhist Centre, mindfulness of breathing and the metta bhavana. And actually, you can spend your whole life exploring these two practices and you never really get to the end of how you can engage creatively with them. So, in a way, these classes are ways to stimulate your own approach to the practice. Some of you were here when it started, and in week 2, Satya Parra talked about why we need a body to meditate. And then Dharma Siddhi was looking at pleasure, the importance of pleasure in meditation. And then we looked at pain, how you work with pain in meditation. And last week, Siddhi was looking at how we work with the mind. This is something that we often talk about, working with your mind in meditation. And Siddhi was talking about that and exploring that specifically in relation to the mindfulness of breathing. He was suggesting last week that the important principle behind kind of working with your mind in meditation is to notice that, notice that we have this tendency to over-identify with our thoughts. And actually there's a lot more to the mind than mere thinking. You can get beyond thought to something far more spacious, which is sort of a gateway to liberation. And what we tend to do on a daily basis is actually just get stuck at this kind of superficial level of thought. And we tend to sort of think that our thoughts, the way we think about the world, is actually the world. It's our reality. And these thoughts then become exercise quite a lot of power. You might think of yourself as a clumsy person, and then that's kind of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So there's lots of different ways in which we can slip into identifying what we think as reality, and in fact, reality itself has a lot more possibility than that. So how can we get beyond thought and thinking? Siddhi was exploring the way that we can do that by coming back to the breath and the body. In fact, that's what the mindfulness of breathing, specifically, looking at it from one perspective, is about coming into relationship with the breath and the body in a way that enables you to unhook from your thoughts and enter into a more spacious, concentrated, absorbed zone. And what you might notice as you unhook from thinking is that you drop down a level into more vivid felt experience, And in a way, we need to work with that as well. And that is where the metta bhavana comes in, I suggest. So it's interesting, isn't it? This, you might have started to notice that, started to explore this, this thing that Siddhi was talking about how we tend to identify with our thoughts. This whole issue of who I am, what myself is is quite a sort of key issue, isn't it, in Buddhism. It's a truism that Buddhism teaches that there is actually no self. And because it's not quite as simple as that, of course, because as all of you, I'm sure, you experience very vividly a sense of self. Self goes actually, this sense of self, this experience of being a separate identity, goes even deeper than thought, although it does manifest in thought, and thoughts can, what's the word I'm looking for, reify or I can't think of the word, make more concrete this sense of self. But actually, we also have quite a visceral sense of self. This self-identity is connected to having a body and experiencing a body. So what's really going on? There is no fixed and separate self, and yet I have a really vivid experience of self. And we can explore that in the Metta-bhavana. There's lots of different aspects to the Metta-bhavana, and in a way this is not so much emphasis on cultivating metta, which is of course a very important aspect, but bear with me, I'm going somewhere that I think will really help you to get in touch with metta, with compassion, with empathy for yourself and other beings. So we can explore this sense of self in the Metta-bhavana. We bring this awareness of self to mind, for example, in the first stage. And we just sit with how it is to be me in this moment. And what I want to really encourage you to do this evening in the practice is to transfer those skills that you picked up in the mindfulness of breathing and apply them here in the Metta-bhavana as well. So you bring the object to mind. In the first stage it's yourself. In the second stage it's a good friend. So you transfer your attention, as it were, to a different object, this good friend, and then a familiar stranger, the neutral person, and then the difficult person. And each of these objects, as they come into your awareness, as you make that effort to bring them into awareness, will impact on your experience. You will start to experience the presence of those in your meditation. And that's where it's really helpful to alternate between making that effort to bring the person, the object, it's a bit of a technical term, isn't it? The person to mind. Alternate the effort of bringing that person to mind with that skill that we develop in the mindfulness of breathing, of coming back to the breath and an awareness of the body. How does your experience respond to the emergence of that person into your imagination, into your mind? Maybe thoughts will arise. Well, they certainly will arise, because that's what thoughts do. Maybe feelings will arise. Take the time to notice them, because that's a way of becoming very much more intimate with your experience of self. And as you become more intimate with it, as you start to notice how it habitually relates both to yourself and to others, you start to see that there are alternative ways of doing that as well. So maybe I can illustrate this with an example in my own experience. I think I'd probably been meditating for 6 months or a year when I was doing the Metta in the shrine room with a bunch of other people. And in the second stage, I brought to mind a very good friend of mine, a friend of mine from school days. I brought her to mind, and probably I was being encouraged to do exactly this thing that I'm encouraging you to do, to sort of just notice what happens in my felt experience when I bring this person to mind. And what I noticed was self-criticism was arising in the form of, she's much prettier than me, she's more successful than me, she does life much better than I do. And with those thoughts came a really heavy, sick feeling in my heart, and sort of just a general feeling of anxiety and dis-ease and just aversion towards my own experience. And I suddenly realised that I had a whole story about this friend, which was about how much better they were than me and how I was using this friend in a way to beat myself up. And it was quite, I felt really sad in that moment. I felt really, really sad, because I understood that on the one hand, I wasn't really able to have a clear and loving connection with this friend, because I didn't have a clear and loving connection with myself, and I felt really sad about that. And I think my mind went off onto a little story about how hopeless I am at friendships and things like that. But it was a really key moment, because then I realised that in order to love other people the way I wanted to, I needed to work on my own sort of self-esteem. And I really did learn something about how helpful it is just to sit with these really sometimes quite uncomfortable feelings and notice them. Not necessarily in the moment try to change them, but just notice and learn, and when possible take the appropriate action. And that means behaving differently off the cushion as well as on. Just noticing I needed to take myself a bit more seriously, go a bit more easy on myself. So that's, I suppose that's quite a painful episode, but of course wonderful things can arise as well. Just noticing that can really give your meditation a lot of energy, and it can help you connect more fully with the feeling of metta. So I thought we could do the metta bhavana sort of more or less now, and what I'll do is I'll encourage you to take some time to bring the person to mind, and then, as it were, sort of letting go of that effort and just noticing what is the quality of your breath just now, what are the feelings arising, and keeping a really open mind. I think sometimes we sit down to this practice with all sorts of ideas about what we should be doing and thinking we've got to somehow manufacture love, kindness. Well, at least for this practice, let go of that expectation. All you really need to do is just notice, do the practice. Last week, Artisidi was saying, at the moment he is just doing the mindfulness of breathing by, doing it as taught in a beginner's class kind of thing, doing the counting, doing the stages. And in a way, we could do the metta bhavana like that this evening. No massive expectation, but just undertaking to alternate the effort of bringing the person to mind, then letting go of that effort and noticing what's happening in the breath, in the body, connecting, working in the way that you are beginning to become proficient at, working with aversion and craving, charting a middle way between those things, and just noticing. Awareness itself is love. Awareness without trying to fix is love. So very often in beginners classes, people are encouraged to decide who are going to be the objects of each of the stages before they start, so that you don't get all sort of confused during the sit. But I'm going to suggest you don't do that. I'm going to suggest you just sit with what arises in your experience. Just trust that what emerges in your experience is absolutely the appropriate thing for you to hold in your awareness. Okay, so I have now time to lead us in a period of the metta bhavana. So do take a few moments just to set yourself up in your posture. Really important to move gently through the stages into the meditation. Perhaps, if you're ready, closing your eyes. Just beginning by scanning through the body, where you notice any tension, seeing if you can just begin the process of releasing that tension. Perhaps beginning with the lower part of the body, allowing it to be heavy and solid, giving you the base of your posture. I find it really helpful just to train the weight of the body down through the sitting bones. So you get a sense of this central core, the column, the pelvis, the spine, shoulders hanging down either side, the neck, crown of the head. This meditation posture is dignified, energizing. So we're connecting with the breath. We're going to allow the mindfulness of breathing to provide a basis of concentration, focus. Just connecting with the breath. Noticing breath coming in and the breath going out. Maybe as the breath comes out, it's as if it takes with it all the tension and the stiffness, hardness of your body, just flows out with the breath. And as you breathe in, Just noticing how the heart center expands with the breath. The air comes into the body, into the lungs. The blood is refreshed with new oxygen. The heart pumps the blood around the body, keeping you alive and tingling and ticking. So maybe a little flavour of gratitude for your hard-working heart, for this body, imperfect but doing its best. Metta Bhavana. So if you do have a degree of absorption, concentration, perhaps initiating the effort to bring yourself to mind. Just becoming conscious, fully aware of how it is to be me in this body just now. You can bring yourself to mind using your name, imagining someone calling you. Imagine looking at yourself in the mirror. How is it just to gaze into your own eyes? Seeing if you can alternate moments of awareness of self with relaxing your effort, just turning your attention to the breath and the body, noticing the quality of your experience. Particularly if thoughts or theories start to arise. Strong feelings, just noticing, coming back to the breath and the body. don't need to fix or change what arises. Just allowing the structure of the breath to hold your experience. And not judging. And when you're ready, just very gently letting go of the first stage. Just allowing a good friend to emerge into your awareness. You could just drop the word friend. See what comes. See what face might come up from the depths. And whatever arises, just stay with that. Using effort to bring them more vividly to mind. Friend. May they be well. So alternating your effort to bring this friend more vividly to mind with just letting go of that effort for a few moments, just to connect with the breath and the body. Maybe you'll notice energies arising, tensions arising. It's all fine. Allowing the structure of the breath and your awareness to hold that. We have the principle of charting a middle way between craving and aversion. Sometimes that helps. And if the mind wanders off, that's also fine, just noticing that, coming back to the object, your good friend, staying with the same one. Renewing your effort to bring them to mind, to bring them into your heart. And again, just coming back to the breath and the body, sensations. Bringing to mind a familiar stranger, perhaps someone you might pass in the street, someone perhaps you saw today. Just taking the time to notice subtle aspects of your response to that person. What did you notice about them? Was there a felt sense, subtle craving or aversion? You don't need to think too much, just bringing them to mind and noticing. Noticing how the breath expands the heart. Can you hold this person in your heart? Coming back to the body and the felt sense. And now bringing to mind someone you're having difficulty with. How does it feel in the body when you bring this person to mind? Just noticing. allowing the structure of the breath to hold your experience in your awareness. Noticing how the breath expands the heart, opens the heart. Being curious about the difficulty. Remembering to breathe. And then just letting go. Just sitting with awareness of the breath and the body. And in the final stage, recalling all of the people you've brought to mind during the practice. Just noticing the journey that you've been on. And then turning your attention outwards. Aware of the people that you're practicing with this evening, the team here, the other people tuning in. Beauty of that shared practice. And just using your imagination to extend outward, becoming aware of the people in your building or your street, taking it out from there, not forgetting the creatures, plant life. This extraordinary myriad world, living beings. So you're a tiny part of this, but your heart is capable of great spaciousness. And just for the last couple of minutes, letting go of all effort. Coming back to the body, noticing the weight of your body. Feel of your clothes on your skin. The space that you're in. Quality of the light. Just as I ring the bell, just gently opening your eyes and coming out of the meditation. So when I don't know, I just thought I'd share my experience actually. When I brought someone to mind in the second stage, a good friend, I dropped the phrase friend in, and actually someone that I'm finding quite difficult came to mind. And it was lovely because I realised that, there's just a hair's breadth between difficulty and vivid love. And it can just really be helpful to remember that everyone wants to be friendly, everyone wants to be loved, everyone wants to be understood. So sometimes it's quite good to just allow the practice to take you where it wants. It's getting a balance, I think, between directed effort and being receptive to what emerges in your experience. I think that's one of the, very interesting skills in meditation. It's an art, I think. So I don't know what your experience was this evening, if you have anything you'd like to share. We've got a few minutes. I know it can be a bit strange going from meditation to keyboard. I can see on the screen, excellent connection.
was very struck by your story, actually, Vidyasakhi, that you said at the in your introduction, that sort of noticing of thoughts, and it's fascinating to how that can be the case, that we don't notice. We sort of step over our experience, and we're being a friend, but we don't notice it's something quite contrary to that tendency. So I was very struck by that story, and you were very much emphasising that we just really notice what is actually going on. I wondered if you found that, because the metta-bhavana, can easily be understood as, well, it's true, isn't it? You're cultivating something, you're trying to cultivate something, and how do you sort of work with that kind of balance?
Well, I think that out of that experience arose compassion for myself.
Mm-hmm.
So by noticing an unhelpful or noticing that there were unhelpful thoughts operating in how I was relating to my friend, noticing that, feeling the sadness at how that was impacting on me and my friend, then just recognising that it's important to be compassionate. I could have just gone into more self-criticism about what a useless person I am. In fact, that was part of what was going on. But also because the principle of the practice is to be compassionate. I could find compassion. And so that arises. So you are cultivating, compassion is metta, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, in a way you can be uncompassionate to yourself in the attempts to develop compassion.
Yes.
Sort of seeing that, and therefore seeing the absolute necessity for compassionate. For compassion, for a compassionate attitude.
Just to feel the sadness actually is a compassionate act, I think. To feel that sadness and to recognise the injury that, in a way, that I'm doing to myself is then a way of just actually, then the behaviour will fall away, or that kind of thinking will fall away.
Great. There's a question coming from, I keep wanting to say Casey, but it's Craig, isn't it? And there's also one from Jeanette. I'll just ask Jeanette's first. So it took a minute for the brain to start working. It was a great meditation. Thank you for the idea to move between the body and the metta. Found I could go deeper with that trick.
Yeah, good. Yeah, the body is it's not what we think it is it? There's, in a way, we think that the body is the self, pure and simple, but actually there's much more to it. So by being receptive to the body, I think we're allowing more into our experience, if that makes any sense. I don't know, Satya Parara, if you've got anything to say. You don't have to, but I kind of think of this as your area.
I think it's being physically with the body really helps to actually connect with metta. Because the metta is actually, it can become a heady idea, isn't it? Whilst if you come down actually in the heart center, you notice where it's going on.
Yeah, thanks. Satya Parara for that.
Great. There's one more question, as I mentioned, from Craig about the two practices. Do you alternate the two, or do you mainly focus on one? On metta, for example. So what helps?
Yeah, it's a good question, Craig. I think, generally speaking, I mean, I'm quite lucky because I teach meditation quite a bit, and that means that I do very often do just the Metta Bhavana, and then I'll do mindfulness of breathing as part of my practice of teaching. And when I'm meditating for myself, I very often do whatever I need to do, whatever I judge I need to do that morning. But I'm almost always attending to the breath when I'm meditating. I don't know if I'm being very clear. I'm almost always using the breath as my focus when I'm meditating. Because mindfulness is the bottom line, really, in meditation. And metta, the cultivation of metta, is something that, in a way, it's important to recognise when you need to do that, I suppose. Rather than just, I'll do the metta, but just sit down to it and do it by rote. There's a subtle difference between doing that and just noticing that, metta would be a good practice to be doing now. So we put them into two little camps and we talk about them because that's what we have to do. But very often in my practice, I'm alternating them within the practice. If something comes up that is quite strong, then the principles of the Metta Bhavana will help me with that. And I very often, in the third stage of the mindfulness of breathing, for example, I do a little bit of a metta, just turning outwards, noticing the people around me, opening my heart. That's very often an element in the third stage of the mindfulness of breathing. Getting beyond self, I think, is, I hope, something that I try to do. I'm not very good at it because I think I'm a bit self-absorbed quite a lot of the time. Have to work on that. Yeah, I think that's a good idea, Craig, to keep the breath, keep connected to the breath. Well, crikey, I've allowed time to slip by again, so it's time to bring the class to an end. And I'll just, people in chat have been talking about, not this weekend, but next weekend, we've got a relaunch of the centre. So the Saturday, the 24th, is like an open day. There's all sorts of stuff happening. Come along, bring your friends. They don't have to be Buddhist, they just have to be interested in finding out about what happens here. So come to our relaunch. We're really excited about it. The centre's beginning to look really great. And then the next day is Dharma Day. So it's a bit more Buddhist, but also everyone's welcome to come to that. We're celebrating the first time the Buddha taught. It's called Turning the Wheel of the Dharma. It's the first time the Buddha taught and inspired human beings to follow him into liberation. So we're going to be celebrating that on Dharma Day, and we'll be having mitra ceremonies. Come along to that. So to become being a mitra means just becoming a friend of Cambridge Buddhist Centre, becoming a committed Buddhist. So that's the relaunch weekend. And just to say that if you've enjoyed this evening, please do think about making a donation. We really want to be able to roll this out as far as we can, to as many people as we can. And if you can sort of support us with whatever you can give, that helps us to sort of keep this wheel rolling. Artisidia has just reminded me that none of the things that we're doing next weekend are online. So I think there might be some things that are online. Forget that. Oh yeah, that's right. You could have just said this, I suppose. But actually, just to say that as of the 29th of July, Meditation Night will be taking a break from YouTube. So it will be in person only for 6 weeks, starting the 29th of July. So if you can come and join us at Cambridge Buddhist Centre, we'd love to see you on a Thursday night. It'll be starting at 7:15. So we've got a class online next week, and then we're taking a 6-week break. We will be putting new stuff on, new led meditations, new input, but it won't be completely live during the summer weeks. So yeah, thanks for coming. Really, really great to hear your comments. I hope you enjoyed your meditation, and see you again, hopefully weekend after this one. Good night.